Well, good afternoon. This is Michael Douville. I am in Scottsdale, Arizona. It is Thursday, the 20th of October, 2016. So I want to tell you my birthday was just recently. I turned 65. I feel absolutely fabulous. I'm on Medicare. What a bonus that is. I mean, to tell you to go from private uh, health insurance to Medicare was like, oh my gosh, I won the lottery. So I'm really, really pleased about that. What do you think of my beard? Huh? That's the first time I've ever done that for a very long time. So that's what's going on in my life. When you turn 65, this is what gets you excited. Hey, listen. So a couple things. I am turning 65. So a lot of my friends, of course, are my age, and they're all being concerned about what are we going to do for income when we retire. So here again, I wrote the book, How to Create a Real Estate Money Machine and Retire with Income. I retired in 1991 with income. My wife and I worked like dogs for 10 years, and that's what it takes. It takes 10 years of really hard work, and then you'll have a nice portfolio that generates income for the rest of your life. So I haven't really worked a full year since 1990. But I'm getting to the point where I'm really going to get serious. So I've worked I've worked 6 to 9 months out of the year. I've accumulated some money. I've actually put some money in a Keogh. I have a really nice Keogh account. So it's time to start thinking of taking some money out of Keogh. So I'm looking at what the distribution is out of these Keoghs and IRAs. And of course, all my friends and my clients are asking the same type of thing. How much can I take out and be safe? So if you go to your advisor like a Fidelity or a Schwab or a Vanguard, they're going to go to a couple of rules. The rules are going to be called the Bengen rule, and it was provided by a financial planner in the 1990s, 1994, 1996. He developed this and figured that 4 to 4.5% withdrawal rate would keep you safe for 30 years. So at 65, if you had $1 million and you withdrew 4%, you could withdraw $40,000 for 30 years. And at the end of 30 years, you'd still have a little bit of money left. So you'd earn over 30 years, $200,000 because you'd have $1 million. Except you've drawn out $1.2 million. So you've had a little bit of earnings on that. And that's called the Bengen rule. Now, here's why Bengen rule is starting to come on a little bit under fire is that in the 1990s and early 2000s, they're talking about a portfolio of 50% stocks, 50% bonds. Hey, look at bonds are yielding 5 to 7%. Now they're yielding 1, maybe 2. To get anything much beyond that, up into the 3s, why you're really starting to taking some risk. Now, talk about risk, then you speak about bonds if they're at 1 or 2, and you have a 10-year bond. I think that 10 years like what 1.65, 1.8, and you have a duration risk. So a 10-year has a 9-factor duration risk. So if the interest rates went to 2.8 and went up 1%, you would lose 9% of your portfolio. Now, if you think they're only going to go up 1%, okay. What if they go up 3 or 4? Because normally they're at 5 to 7% range, because that's when they were when the Bengen was developed. And if it went up 4%, you would lose 36% of your bond portfolio. Now, the same thing with your PEs on your stocks. You have to realize that the non-GAAP, which means it's non-generally accepted accounting principle, which gives a lot of flexibility for reporting, they're in the teens. The true GAAP, which means the generally accepted accounting principles, there's no fudging there. They're pushing 20s. So that's pretty high PE. So there's some concern that maybe there's an awful lot of risk, and it could be losing from 35 to 70% of your portfolio. And of course, if that happens, why it really, really, really affects what you can take out of your retirement. So here we are in Phoenix. Now, let me say Phoenix is probably not completely unique. There's probably several cities in the nation. I'm not going to start naming them. But Phoenix is right next to California. California is losing business people and population. They're just bleeding. And last year they lost 450,000 taxpayers. That's the IRS knows these things. So they lost 450,000 taxpayers. And of course, we're right next door, and we certainly get quite a few of them. In Maricopa County, and I should say it's really the Phoenix Metropolitan Statistical Area, the MSA. It covers Maricopa County, parts of Pinal, We enjoyed 85,000 new residents net, which means that puts a little bit of pressure on our housing here. We only built about 21,000 units, so it's really raised the rents here in town. We don't have a glut of housing, and we have an awful lot of people still coming here. And we're projected to do that for the next 10 years. So we have a pretty good market. So I'm not saying that this is going to work absolutely everywhere, but I think it's probably going to work here. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe what you want to do is take some of that money out of the stock and bond. We've been talking about reallocating for ad infinitum here because of the risk factor. Real estate is safer. I didn't say safe. It's safer because we did have our head handed to us, and we were a poster child of foreclosures and real estate debacle 10 years ago. That's not necessarily what's happening now, but we're really in pretty good shape. So here's what I'm going to say. We're blessed with really good affordable housing here in Phoenix. We have houses that you can rent. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, and wonderful neighborhoods with great schools, close to transportation, great shopping, and you can raise your family in these houses. They rent for anywhere from $1,000 to $1,350 a month, and we cash flow after all costs 4 to 4.5%. Now that's funny, is that's about the Bengen rule. That's the top of the Bengen rule. So we start our growth at 4 to 4.5%. Now when I say net, I'm talking not only PITI and HOA, which is what most brokers will tell you, but we've done this a few times. We've been around the block a few times. So we also know that you have repair escrow. We put a repair escrow into the equation. We have vacancy, but you can't have people moving out on Saturday and be realistic and think you're going to have someone moving in on Sunday. Sometimes we have a week or two in between, and we put a vacancy factor in. It's very, very low here in Phoenix, but it exists, and we want to compensate for that. We also have management. Look at, most of my clients are well-to-do. They really don't want to interface with tenants, and they don't want to be called in the middle of the night. So we hire a management company. We put that into your cost structure as well. And then you're going to want to get a tenant. Well, if you want to get a tenant, it's unfortunate. You have someone to give you a service, they expect to be paid. So we also factor that in. So after factoring in all the costs that we can think of, and I've been doing this for a really long time, we put this in. We cash on cash return between 4.5%, 5%. Sometimes we're at 5.5%. Sometimes we get blessed and get a 6%. But for our purposes, 4.5%. So let's say we rent it at $1,200. We're experiencing reasonably good increases in our rent. We've had typically we're 3 to 3.5%, like clockwork. Because of this pressure we're getting from other states, and you have this net migration coming in, and we have a little bit of pressure on our housing. We do not have a bubble here. We have pressure on our housing because we don't have enough houses for everybody. We expect that the rents are going to increase. They've been increasing like mad. So last year they did 9.7, I think it was. So far this year is about 8.6, and I'm hearing 4.5 for next year. So at 4.5, if you rented it for $1,200, then the next year would be $1,250. The next year after that would be $1,300. The year after that would be $1,365, and so on and so on and so on. So instead of taking a 4.5% cash on cash for the Bengen rule for 30 years, we're going to grow your income. So that 4.5, that $45,000 on a one, say we took $1 million and we took 4.5%, which would be the high end of that Bengen rule, and we get $45,000. Now, if you put it in real estate and we get a growth factor on our rent, so you're going to be looking at $45,000 is going to grow to $48,500. Then the year after that's going to grow to $53,000, and it's going to go to $58,000, and it's going to go to $62,000, and then it's going to go to $65,000. So after 5 years, the Bengen rule is still paying 4.5%. You're still getting $45,000. If you're investing in real estate here in Phoenix, you're probably getting close to $60,000 in 5 years. So you can see where that income goes up a lot. So let me also think of this. The Bengen rule tells you that you're going to deplete your assets in 30 years. You might, if you get really lucky and things really go your way, we've had a boom town, you could have more. You could have up to half. You could have 2/3. But you're probably going to deplete something. So look, we're not going to live forever. I hope to God I'm going to have grandchildren and family. So I want to give a legacy. So let's think if we buy a place for $200,000 and we put $100,000 down, we're extremely conservative. In 30 years, what happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. That $100,000 mortgage gets paid off. You can do it a lot quicker than 30 years, but let's just say nothing. You just let everything go, and you don't get appreciation. Nothing happens, but someone has paid your mortgage off, and your tenant has paid that off for you. So the $100,000 that you put down is not depleted. It's not got down to zero. It's not going down to 2/3. It's doubled. So instead of having $100,000 in a property, if nothing happens, you probably got $200,000. But the reality of it is that we probably are going to see your houses grow. So even if it went up by 3% a year, after 30 years, is it worth $300,000? But if it doesn't at all, that $100,000 is not depleted. It's grown. So not only are you growing your income, you're growing your assets as well. And this can be done at any age. Any age. You don't have to be 25 years old, although that'd be fabulous to do it at 20. Could you help your kids do that? At 25 years old, have them buy 10 properties for 10 years. By the time they're 35 years old, they can retire. Do some principal reduction plans, so by the time they're 40, they're completely out of debt. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Can you imagine what kind of life you'd be changing for your kids to do that? They'd have $8,000 to $10,000 a month coming in every month for the rest of their life. It'd be pretty cool. So anyway, that's the Bengen rule. So I think that we really need to think about that. I'm here in Phoenix. We love your business. My kids are thinking of coming into business, so we'd love to get their business going. But I'm here to help you in any way you possibly can. You can buy my book and let me know what you think of that. I speak around the valley here, and I'm really here to try and change some lives. So my very best to you. Give me a call if you have any questions, and have a great weekend. See you, partner. Bye-bye.